Okay, imagine this. You unearth the discovery. And it doesn't just, add a new page to history, but it completely rewrites the timeline for something as ancient, as fascinating as mummification.
Right.
For centuries, we thought we knew the oldest examples, where they came from, when they started. But some groundbreaking new research, it's turning all that completely on its head.
It really is shaking things up.
So today we're doing a deep dive into these incredible findings from Southeast Asia. Scientists there have found what looks like the world's earliest evidence of human mummification.
And we're not talking a little bit earlier.
No, not at all. We're talking pushing the origins back by thousands of years. So our mission today is to unpack this discovery, look at the really unique method they used, and sort of understand what it tells us about these ancient cultures. And just so you know, this deep dive, it's drawing from recent articles in Science X and Science News, both just out, September 15th and 16th, 2025. They detail the research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So you're basically getting the shortcut to understanding this really exciting new chapter. Okay, let's unpack this incredible news.
What's fascinating here, I think, is not just the age, though that's obviously huge. It's the implications, for how we understand human ingenuity, spiritual beliefs, even how people adapted these complex practices across totally different places.
It really challenges our assumptions.
Absolutely. About where and when this all began.
Okay, so let's start right there with the big reveal. The core finding is, well, it's genuinely astounding. It's clear evidence of smoke-drying mummification.
Smoke drying.
Practiced by hunter-gatherers across this huge area, southern China, Southeast Asia, maybe beyond. And the date. As far back as 12,000 years ago.
12,000.
Just let that sink in for a second. 12,000 years.
It's hard to even grasp that time scale sometimes.
And that number, it isn't just slightly older than what we usually think of. It's way older.
Yeah, significantly.
So for context, this practice, it predates the Chinchorro culture in South America. They started maybe around 7,000 years ago, drying bodies in the desert, removing organs.
Right, the coastal desert environment helped there.
And it's even way before ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom practices. They really got going about 4,500 years ago.
Right.
With the resins and embalming we all know.
So we're talking, double, maybe even triple the known timeline for deliberate mummification.
Exactly. It's a massive shift.
It really is a paradigm shift. And what's also compelling is the scale. This wasn't like one isolated group doing this.
Bro.
The evidence shows this tradition was widespread, confirmed at sites in southern China, Vietnam, Indonesia, lots of places.
Wow.
And what's more, the research suggests it probably extended even further, maybe to Japan. And incredibly, it seems to have continued in some form into modern times in parts of the New Guinea Highlands and Australia.
Into modern times. That's incredible endurance.
It shows this amazing cultural continuity spanning well over 10,000 years. It suggests, a really deep shared cultural idea flowing through these early populations.
Over 10,000 years. That
Yeah.
really speaks to how important it must have been culturally. But, okay, how do they even figure this out? I mean, we're not talking about finding golden masks or perfectly preserved bodies in dry tombs.
Yeah, definitely not.
These are ancient remains, often fragmented in humid, tropical places. Not exactly ideal for preservation.
Right. Well, it started with some clues, some little things that didn't quite fit the standard explanation. For a long time, archaeologists in the region looked at these ancient graves and called them primary burials. Meaning they thought the bodies were just laid to rest, intact, in one go. Like a single ceremony, similar to how we might think of a funeral today.
Okay, standard burial.
Exactly. But as the team looked closer, some things felt off. They kept finding these tightly crouched or squatting burials. Now, that posture itself wasn't totally surprising. It's kind of a hallmark for hunter-gatherers in that area, say 20,000 to 4,000 years ago.
Okay.
But there was a physical anthropologist, Hirofumi Matsumura, who noticed something odd. Some of these skeletons were arranged in ways that just seemed anatomically impossible if the body had just been placed there after death.
Impossible how?
Like hyperflexed beyond what natural decomposition or settling would do, as if they'd been deliberately positioned, maybe even bound, before rigor mortis set in.
Ah, okay. So manipulation.
Right. And on top of that, some bones showed signs of partial burning or charring.
Burning, like cremation.
Not full cremation. It was patchy, often in areas with less muscle, thinner tissue, think skulls, lower legs, elbows. It suggested heat, but controlled heat. Not an inferno. Definitely more than just a simple burial.
So you've got these weird positions, patchy, burning, intriguing but confusing, right?
That's
Doesn't quite fit the primary burial idea.
Exactly. Puzzles. And then comes the aha moment. It sounds almost like fiction, but it happened. September 2017, they're taking a break from digging at the Bao Du site in central Vietnam.
Right.
And one researcher, Xiao Chun Hung, apparently sort of half-joking but genuinely curious, just blurts out this question. Could these burials be similar to the smoked mummies of Papua New Guinea?
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. And that one question, kind of out of the blue, completely reframed everything. It kicked off this whole new line of investigation.
It's amazing how sometimes just asking a different question can unlock things.
It truly is. That question immediately made them think, okay, let's look into modern smoke drying practices. They went and observed groups like the Dani people in Wamena, Papua, Indonesia. They saw it firsthand in 2019.
Were there similarities?
Oh, striking similarities. The body postures, the subtle signs of heat exposure, the whole careful preservation aspect. It matched so well with what they were seeing in these thousands of years old remains.
So it gave them a living model.
Exactly. A living, breathing comparison that connected the ancient past to the present. It gave real weight to the smoke mummification hypothesis.
Okay, so they have this powerful idea, backed up by modern parallels. But the next big step is proving it scientifically, right? Especially, like you said, when the bones aren't always obviously blackened. How do you prove smoke drying happened 12,000 years ago?
Yeah, that's the critical part. You can't just eyeball it. This is where the really clever science comes in, and it gets really interesting. They needed a way to read the thermal signature left on the bones themselves.
Thermal signature.
Right. Evidence of heating, even low-level heating. So they used two different independent lab techniques on bone samples from 54 different burials across 11 sites. So a good sample size.
Okay, what were the techniques?
The first one was X-ray diffraction, XRD. Think of it like, well, like taking the bone's temperature, microscopically speaking. Bones are made of this mineral, hydroxyapatite. When bone gets heated, the crystals of this mineral change structure, they recrystallize. XRD can detect these changes. It's great for spotting high heat, like cremation, but crucially, it could also tell the difference between unheated old bones and bones heated at lower temperatures, consistent with slow smoking, not intense burning.
Okay, so XRD tells them if the bones got hot and roughly how hot.
Yeah.
What about the second technique?
The second was Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, FTIR. Now, FTIR is even more sensitive. It picks up on really subtle molecular changes caused by lower temperatures changes that might not even show up clearly with XRD.
More sensitive.
Yeah. By looking at the light patterns absorbed by the bone molecules, they calculate something called the crystallinity index, or CI. Higher CI values indicate more heat exposure. It essentially reads the fingerprint left by fire, even without obvious burn marks.
Wow, okay. So using these super sensitive tools, was the evidence clear-cut that it screams smoked?
It really did. The results confirmed that almost all the remains they tested had been exposed to low heat, consistent with smoking. But here's the really convincing part. The variation within single skeletons.
Variation. How so?
Well, you might find, say, an elbow bone showing higher heat exposure than a thigh bone from the same person.
Right.
Or a foot bone showing more heat than a tooth. This uneven pattern was key.
Why was that so important?
Because it ruled out the possibility that these changes were just, natural changes from being buried for thousands of years. That's called diagenetic alteration. It tends to affect the skeleton more uniformly.
Ah, I see. So the patchiness proved it wasn't just time.
Exactly. It pointed directly to patterned, controlled heat exposure. Someone was deliberately applying heat and smoke, likely targeting certain areas or positioning the body in a specific way relative to the fire. It proved it was a specialized process, a deliberate heat treatment.
Not accidental burning, not uniform aging.
Precisely. It was intentional. And sometimes any blackening wasn't even from charring, but from soot building up in a smoky, low-oxygen environment. The science really nailed down that this was a distinct mortuary practice.
Deliberate intention. That's a powerful phrase. It really paints a picture of a careful, skilled process.
So, okay, we know they did it. We know how it was confirmed. Let's dive into the practice itself. What did it actually involve, combining the archaeology and those modern parallels?
Right. Putting it all together, you get a picture of a very specific technique. It seems that right after death, and this is crucial, before rigor mortis fully set in the bodies, we're tightly bound.
Bound how?
Often in that hyperflexed, crouched, or squatting position. That explains those anatomically strange arrangements Matsumura first noticed.
Okay, bound tightly right after death. Then what?
Then they were suspended, hung up, most likely over low temperature, smoky fires. Not hot fires, smoky ones.
Sure.
And this wasn't quick. It seems it went on for a long time, possibly several months.
Months, wow. Yeah, carefully managed in some kind of controlled space, probably a hut built for this purpose. It represented a significant investment of time, resources, and attention.
So it clearly wasn't just about keeping the flies away in a hot climate then. I mean, months of tending a smoky fire.
Yeah.
There had to be a much deeper reason.
You're absolutely right. Practical preservation in a humid place where bodies decay fast was definitely an outcome, a benefit. But the driving force seems to have been much deeper. Rooted in, well, love, reverence, really powerful spiritual beliefs.
Beliefs about what?
About connection, about presence. It seems this was a way for families to keep a physical and spiritual connection with their ancestors, to literally keep them present. It was about, bridging time and memory.
Keeping them present.
Yeah, think about the ethnographic records, like from the Unga people in Papua New Guinea. They have beliefs that the spirit of the person wanders off during the day but comes back to the mummy at night.
Wow. So the mummy is like a home for the spirit.
In a way, yes. It shows this profound desire to maintain a tangible, almost living connection, not just a memory. And it proves these complex ways of dealing with death weren't just limited to places like Egypt. They were innovatively adapted even to tough tropical environments when the cultural drive was strong enough.
That's incredible. Such a testament to human connection. And thinking about this, it must change how we interpret other things found with these remains, right? Like, didn't you mention cut marks earlier? People used to think that meant dismemberment.
Yes, exactly. That's a huge shift in understanding. Before, when archaeologists found skulls maybe placed in the chest cavity or bones bundled together or cut marks on the skeleton, the go-to interpretation was often intentional dismemberment, maybe for rituals, maybe secondary burial practices.
Okay.
But now, through the lens of smoke mummification, those cut marks look very different. They're seen as anatomical interventions, meaning they were likely functional cuts made as part of the mummification process, maybe to help release joints, to get that super tight flexed position, especially if binding was delayed a bit, or maybe to help fluiding drain during the long smoking process.
So practical steps, not violence.
Mostly, yes. It's possible a small number of marks relate to something else, maybe post-smoking removal of flesh for specific rituals. There are some accounts from Aboriginal South Australia that mention things like that, but the majority look like part of the how-to of smoke mummification.
And the bones being out of place.
Yeah.
Like the skull in the chest.
That's now thought to be more likely what archaeologists call taphonomic outcomes, changes that happen after the main process. So maybe some decay happened while the mummy was being kept for a long time, or bones got disturbed when it was eventually moved for final burial. It just makes much more sense in this context.
It reframes everything. And you mentioned keeping the mummies. They weren't buried right away.
No, that seems clear. They were often kept, maybe in the family home or in rock shelters or caves nearby, and not just for a short time, but potentially for years, maybe even generations, as long as the person was actively remembered by the living community.
Wow. Living with the ancestors, quite literally.
Pretty much. Only after that time, perhaps when direct memory faded, would they be given a final burial. It highlights this incredible, sustained connection they maintained. Mourning wasn't a single event, it was an ongoing relationship.
It changes so much about how we view early human societies and death. So, zooming out, what are the really big picture implications here for understanding human history, culture on a global scale?
Well, first, the sheer similarity of the techniques, the smoke drying, the tight flexion across such a huge area from China down to potentially Australia and over this immense time span. It strongly suggests a shared cultural tradition.
Not just isolated inventions.
Right. It points to deep, deep roots for these ideas, part of a much larger interconnected cultural world in early Southeast Asia and beyond.
How deep are we talking? Could this connect back to the very first human migrations out of Africa?
It's definitely a possibility being considered. This tradition might actually date back to that early wave of Homo sapiens moving through the tropical parts of southern Asia. And there's other evidence that hints at this.
Like what?
Genetic studies, studies of skull shapes, craniofacial morphology. They've already shown connections between these pre-Neolithic Southeast Asian groups, indigenous Papuans and Australians, and even the ancient Jomon people of Japan. They seem to represent this sort of first layer of modern human population in the region.
So the mummification practice could be part of that shared ancient heritage.
It could well be. And honestly, the practice might be even older than the 12,000-year date we're focusing on. There are sites with flexed burials, partial burning, hyperflexion that date even earlier.
Older than 12,000.
Yeah, places like Mian, Thanh
Yeah.
and Hang Huay Cave in Vietnam has a date around 14,000 years ago. So the story might go back even further. The evidence is building.
This is genuinely mind-blowing. It completely redraws the map of mummification history. It's not just Egypt and the Andes anymore. It's this vast, ancient tradition in tropical Asia.
Absolutely. And if you connect it to the bigger picture, it tells us that complex ways of dealing with death, ways rooted in deep respect, spiritual belief, strong emotional bonds, these were much more common, much more ancient than we thought.
And adaptable.
Incredibly adaptable. They figured out how to do this, how to preserve their loved ones, even in really challenging human environments where natural preservation just wouldn't happen. It highlights this enduring set of beliefs and amazing human ingenuity. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about the why. The deep need to connect, to remember, to keep loved ones close.
So we've taken this deep dive, and wow, it's revealed not just, the oldest mummies we know of, but this incredibly profound, long-lasting cultural practice spanning millennia, spanning continents.
Yeah.
And these findings, they give us such incredible insights into how ancient people faced loss, how they celebrated memory, how they tried to keep those bonds going, even after death. It really shows the adaptability, the inventiveness of our ancestors, preserving loved ones not just physically, but preserving their presence.
Absolutely. The engineering really that went into this technique to suit their specific environment, all driven by these deep spiritual needs. It's just a powerful reminder of how universal human culture is, how we all grapple with mortality and memory.
So what does this all mean for us listening now? I think it raises a really important question, doesn't it? If new science, new ways of looking can uncover this huge, long-hidden history in places we thought we understood, what other facts about the past might just be waiting for a rethink? What else are we missing about our ancestors just because we haven't asked the right questions yet or looked at the evidence we already have through a different, maybe more curious lens?